West Indian politicians and their narrowest views. I started in music when I was 6 years old. By the time I reached like 9, almost 10, I wrote my first song, a song called Vote for Motley and Get Free Cakey. And at that time, there was a man called Ernest Dighton Motley, who happened to be the grandfather of Mayor Motley. And at that time, Barbados had a mayor. So anybody here knows where St. Mary's Church is in town? You know where it is? Yeah, down by Courts and down there by the garden, Jubilee Garden. There's a building that if you were walking straight down Broad Street, there's a building that you would run into if you didn't turn. That building was the mayor's office. And that's where Mayor Motley's grandfather would operate from. He was a very powerful man, because the mayor had a lot of power because he was running the city. And I remember as a boy had this election, it was really hot. And there was a man called Papa Lightfoot. I never knew his real name. And he would have these loudspeaker things. And he would go around and he would say, vote for Motley and get free cakey. Vote for Motley and get free cakey. Tonight, 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 all roads leads to Chapman's Lane. And then he would look at somebody at Mildred. Make sure you cook Cocoa Wednesday here. Vote for Motley and get free cakey. And he goes to, he mixed the real thing he's supposed to do with other stuff. And that inspired me to write this first song. I was like 9 years, going 10. After that, a long time passed, and I went into my first competition as a teenager, similar age to y'all. Some of y'all here be 15, 16, 17, I don't know. But about that time, I was like 17, and I came third. And then the next couple of years, I went back and I won. And until this day, I'm still the youngest person to ever win a Calypso crown in Barbados. That is what got me into understanding Caribbean peoples, understanding our music, understanding that we need to be integrated as a people to survive, and so on. And I began to write these songs and all that. The Egyptians had written on papyrus and stone what philosophy is. They said the wise walk this way, talk this way, eat this way, drink this way, dress this way, die this way, have births this way, marry this way. They had it all written down. And there are several things they taught us. For example, they had a system called the mystery system. And in the mystery system, you had everything you could think of. But it was a secret order where the high priest would carry out their great works. So that they gave us two important things: ecclesiastical and educational. For example, let me read for you. They gave us all the arts and science you could think of. They teach us architecture, they teach us shipbuilding, economics, you name it. Because that first system they had was the first system of salvation, the first system that man, through the arts, they believe that you can liberate yourself from being a mortal to immortal. But bear this in mind, and we're going to get to the music to understand the integration and the movement between the Caribbean peoples and Egypt. It sounds so far-fetched, but it's not. This book is called Stolen Legacy by George G.M. James. Get a copy of it. It's going to re-educate you. Listen carefully, and I'll just read a small portion of it for you. It says here, the term Greek philosophy to begin with is a misnomer, for there is no such philosophy in existence. The ancient Egyptians had developed a very complex religious system called the Mysteries, which was also the first system of salvation. As such, it regarded the human body as a prison house of the soul, which could be liberated from its bodily impediments through the disciplines of the arts and sciences. Through what? The discipline of the arts and sciences. An advanced one from the level of a mortal to that of a god. This was this notion of the summum bonum, or greatest good, to which all men must aspire, and it also became the basis of all ethical concepts. The Egyptian mystery system was also a secret order, and membership was gained by initiation and a pledge to secrecy. The teaching was graded and delivered orally to the neophyte, and under these circumstances of secrecy, the Egyptians developed secret systems of writing and teaching, and listen to this, and forbid their initiates from writing what they had learned. After nearly, and I said after over, 5,000 years of prohibition against the Greeks, they were permitted to enter Egypt for the purpose of their education. For what? For the purpose of their education. First, through the Persian invasion, and secondly, through the invasion of Alexander the Great. From the 6th century BC, therefore, to the death of Aristotle, 322 BC, the Greeks made the best of their chance to learn all they could about Egyptian culture. Most students received instructions directly from the Egyptian priests, but after the invasion by Alexander the Great, the royal temples and libraries were plundered and pillaged, and Aristotle's school converted the library at Alexander into a research center. There is no wonder then that the production of the unusually large number of books ascribed to Aristotle has proved a physical impossibility for any man within a single lifetime. I was able to go to the places where our people were first enslaved. And I want to make a statement to you here so you can understand again the connectivity. No slaves came to Barbados, not even one. The difference is that our people came and were enslaved. We never came as slaves. We came as doctors. We came as mathematicians, carpenters, masons, joiners, all kinds of artisans, artists, engineers that came on those boats. But when they came here, they were enslaved. And you have to ask the question, how do you enslave a people? It's so simple. You take away three things, which are all into one. Take away the language, take away the religion, and their culture, meaning particularly the Africans, the drum. If tomorrow morning, all of us in here were told, as from Monday morning, we will have to speak Russian, we will all sound like damn stupid people, because we will no longer be able to converse in what has come natural to us, English. And that's exactly what happened to the Africans. They were brought and told, please do not speak that Swahili, please do not speak that Yoruba, please do not speak any of those African languages. You are now speaking English. And we struggle with it till today, to the point where we can't even speak with the English accent unless we deliberately make an attempt to, oh, good morning, how are you? We can't do that. We just say it with an African accent most of the time. And don't go to St. Lucia, and don't go to Haiti, because you hear it even more thickly. They would say it to you in very African tones, because they haven't really lost it, especially the Haitians, the way how they learned to speak English as a second, third, fourth, or fifth language. Because remember, a lot of Africans who came here could speak Arabic, and they could speak also the village languages that they had acquired. So, when the Mali people went into other West African countries like Nigeria and Ghana, like I told you before, I went there. I saw where our people were held. I walked in Nigeria down to the beach, had a trip on a replica of the exact replica of the little boat that would take you to the big ship. And it was a most moving experience. Our people from in Nigeria, can't speak for Ghana because I don't know Ghana that well, came from Elara. And there's a reason why that place up the hill is called Elara Court. It's because Miss Carter, who built that building, when they asked her, why did you call it Elara? She said, it reminds me of Elara in Nigeria, in Africa. So our people came from Elara. I had to walk to a place called Badagry. Now, I was made an African chief in both villages, in both Elara and Badagry. I met and sat with the kings, because in our minds, when we hear king or queen, we just think of England real fast, because we have been trained to do that. And so, to get back to the Mali people, they traveled with the knowledge that they got from the Egyptians into other West African countries and brought with them the musical instruments. Those instruments, some of them came with the people who were enslaved, but some were actually made in the Caribbean and in North America, in particular in North and South Carolina, Virginia, etc. It's good for you to note. How many people here like jazz? Oh yeah, well, thank you, me too. To note that jazz you hear that they say come from New Orleans came from right here in Caribbean. The Caribbean people took it with them after the enslavement. So when our people came now, we had our music, in particular the drum. But we were so smart that we did not use the drum just to beat and play the music and dance as they told you. They were able to communicate like how we just do on the cell phone now by drum. So we're able to send messages. Like how, what they have this, the Morse code. They were able to tell, well, a baby just born, or sister's body, Shadia just get beat, or somebody died, or, you know, they were able to actually communicate by drum. And I saw it again in Ghana 5 years ago. They sent and beat a message in this village, and say the message is sent out here in K-Phil. Somebody picks it up in Warrens. Who sends it up a little further by Julian? Who sends it up by CBC? Who sends it up by Gary? Who sends it up and up and up till up to the airport in no time? But until today, the same thing happens. Something called I can tell the people what you do. And somebody told the people what we do and what we did. In other words, you see that drum? Massa, that drum is not there just for playing. So you see when you do it like that? He just told his sister on the plantation that the sugar crop is going to be real good this year. How he did that? He did it on the drum. Ah, come on, that's impossible. Impossible? All right, watch. You're going to hear a message come back that's going to say, okay. How'd you do it? But. Stupid. He did it. And then they banned the drum. So the drum was banned throughout the history of the slavery once they realized how important it was. Until so-called emancipation came and we got back the drum and we were able to dance and sing and play for our enslavers. After that, of course, we got back to other instruments. But they were smart enough, even then, to decide that they will have it on a limited basis. You don't play no drum all year round. You could play the flute, or the mandolin, or the violin. But see that drum? That you could send messages, we're not going to allow you to use it except at festive times like crop over on the plantations. After we got back the instruments, we began to play. And I am sure that even in the days of Buss's rebellion, they call it rebellion, I call it like a revolution, because what a lot of people don't understand, as Dr. Hilary Beckers would tell you, Bussa was not trying to free himself from no slavery. Bussa was trying to take over the country. He was that smart. He was one of the last, among the last batch of people who were enslaved that came here. So all music then started to come up. And our politicians used that music most effectively. Then they began to campaign. Then they began to get the right to talk. And long before adult suffrage, we had people like Clement Payne in the 30s. Because remember also that we have connectivity to Panama. So when in the building of the Panama Canal, a lot of Barbadians who played music went there. And we helped to strengthen the musical and cultural landscape of Panama. And then when our Barbadians came back home after the building of the canal, a lot of them were musicians too. They're smart people. A lot of them got robbed out of properties they had because it was against the law for any individual to own land. They had been a group. So a lot of Panamanians bought land in groups and got robbed after a while because the papers were difficult to come by, etc., etc. But the one thing that they always had was the music. And that's why you always see me try to connect between like a Latin influence. And out of Cuba as well. A lot of them went to Cuba and brought back some of that musical experience with them. And the politicians use it to great effect. And so when Clement Payne stood up and said, agitate, but don't violate, he was sending a serious message musically. And I wrote this song at that in memory of that time, which we're getting into like the 1930s. And at that time, ironically, too, the Trinidadians were coming here by boat for the first time. So their music was reaching the Barbadians, and we had one single Barbadian musician who played for all the Trinidadians that came, and his name was Shillingford Agard, known by most Barbadians as Shilling. A great, great musician. a great composer, an amazing guitarist. I visually saw him play, and I only saw two people play at that level in my life. Him and a man called Fitzroy Coleman. If there's a third, it would be Mike Seeley. And if there's a fourth, there's a guy called Jeannie Graham who played Latin music. It's again the influence of the Latin, the Cubans, and their music on us. And Schilling played a lot of those songs, and a lot of those songs talked about the hard times of the 30s, because we had the 1930s depression. And that's why he wrote songs like The Parks and the Terraces, which I will get to later. But this one, at that time, nobody considered Clement Payne as a hero. So I call him a villain, actually. There were only about maybe 25 of us who were campaigning to make Clement Payne a national hero. Namely, some would be like Ricky Paris, now deceased, Francis Bell, Bobby Clark, David Commercial, and so on. And we were considered as rebels and rabble rousers and, you know, troublemakers and all that, because all we were doing is to try to sensitize and educate our people to the fact that we came from kings and queens, that we didn't come from no slaves, and that our music is great, and that our impact on the political landscape will be as perennial as the grass. So I wrote this song. What you gonna do about Clement Payne? What you gonna do about Clement Payne? He fought for this country again and again. What you gonna do about Clement Payne? Let me repeat. What you gonna do about Clement Payne? What you gonna do about Clement Payne? He fought for this country again and again. What you gonna do about Clement Payne? He is a Barbados national hero. But our history books don't say so. He fought for the rights of the poor and oppressed. He shocked and he rocked the ruling class, yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yeah. He tell the people, agitate, agitate, but don't violate, agitate, agitate, but don't violate, agitate, 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 don't violate, agitate, agitate, but don't violate. What you gonna do about Clement Payne? Will you build some statue in his name? Cause he fought for this country again and again. What you gonna do about Clement Payne? Bay Street School was his old alma mater. But them British police call him traitor. He used to keep meeting over in Province Square. The police ran him away over to Golden Square. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And he tell the people, agitate, agitate, but don't violate. Agitate, 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 don't violate. What you gonna do about Clement Payne? What you gonna do about Clement Payne? He fought for this country again and again. What you gonna do? What you gonna do? What you gonna do about Clement Payne? It has changed quite a lot. Because remember that our parents and grandparents, not only did they dislike things Caribbean in terms of the music, because they were told that this music was inferior to the other music. And so our children grew up loving American top 40 of the 50s, and before that the ones with Nat Cole and Doris Day and Frank Sinatra and so on from the 40s, and even the jazz of the 30s with Ella Fitzgerald and so on, the 30s and 40s and 50s. But nothing Caribbean. Or the fact that not so long ago, in my time, when you went to church at the Anglican church or the Methodist church, of which I went to both, there were names on the back of seats in the church. This is not 100 years ago. I thought when I went to Sunday school. And on those names were the names of the plantocracy or the ruling class in Barbados. And God forbid you sit down in one of them chairs because it was empty. Because Mr. Goddard or Mr. Wilkinson had paid for the right to have his name on that chair in your church, and therefore if the church crowded, you better stand up because you cannot sit down in that chair. And I remember I was 10 years old at James Street Methodist Church in James Street. I decided right then and then that I wasn't standing up in no church, not when seats were available. And I went and I do so. And folded my hand like this. And the Sunday school teacher very politely came to me, son, excuse me, but you know, that's Mr. Wilkinson's chair and you have to like move. I said, is he coming today? Oh, well, we're not sure, but you know, of course we have to reserve it just in case he comes. I said, well, you know that I am not moving from here. So Wilkinson, my boy Wilkie, would have to find another chair if there is one available, because I ain't moving from here. And of course they went and tell my mother, and so they get beaten, the normal thing that children would get for disobeying and this and that and the third and so on, right? And so that triggered something special in me, that something silly was going on in Barbados, of which I had to object to for the rest of my life. Other incident was there was a man called Harold Macmillan down by Mayor Motley's father's office that I told you about before, the mayor. And they had us down there as children. I was 10, getting ready in the next year to go to St. Leonard's School. And this man talked some ignorance. When I said ignorance, educated ignorance. Because the words that he was using, I remember them simply because at that time I used to almost have a photographic memory. If I saw something and I read it, I would pretend that I am an actor and that I had to memorize the lines. So everything became lines to me. So everything I read was lines. That's how I educated myself, with lines. So if I read that at that time, I will write it back. And a lot of times I got punished in school for it because the teachers would write nice copy from the Daily News, or you know, because they couldn't believe that I was actually recapping the whole thing verbatim, right? Anyway, I hope I don't lose my train of thought here, but it shows you that this ignorant man, Harold Macmillan, who was then the Prime Minister of Great Britain, UK, England, he got down there and talking about what on this auspicious occasion and all. Okay. Words that we at 9 and 10 years old had no idea what he was talking about. And talked for a prolonged period of time, and all of a sudden, children fainting in the sun. I remember we were a colonial island at the time. There was no independence. You had to hear God Save the Queen all the time. I was living in Emmerton, which was a stone throw away from there. And I worked out that I was not going to stay there and faint, because I was hungry too. So I walk and eat and I walk out. I don't know if it was the children, or teacher, or what, but the next morning when I went to school, Mr. Lane said to me, I was made to understand that you insulted the British Prime Minister by walking out on his most important speech. And what do you have to say for that? I said, sir, you are speaking the truth. But I did not understand nothing that that man was saying. And I was vexed because all my friends was falling down fainting all the time, and he keep on talking, and we hungry, we like to get a little milk and biscuits. Because in the days they should give you milk and biscuit. 2 hard eclipse biscuits and a cup of clean milk. And I was longing for my little break to get it around 11 o'clock. It's already there. I went home. That man, Mr. Lane, tell me to write 50 lines. I said, but sir, I don't have a book. Let your mother buy one. I remember I was poor. All of us were poor. Don't let them fool you because we're in the parks and terraces today that we were not poor. All of us that born in that era, poor. And I had to get the exercise book. And he told me to write 50 lines on, I must respect the British Crown and its representatives. And he taught me to spell the word representatives. Well, youngsters, I can inform you that I wrote 500 lines. Because I wanted to show him that his 50 lines meant nothing to me. And I learned a new word when I carried back in my book. It was called insubordination. I was told that what I did was insubordination because I was trying to defy him to prove to him that the 50 lines meant nothing to me, and that's why I write 500. But he also taught me something, that forever and ever, amen, I will struggle against injustices in the world. And that's what I stand for until today. The important thing was to get the Caribbean people together as one so that economies could flow, so that the CARICOM that would follow after us would be something important in terms of the economic growth of our islands, etc. To enhance the arts, to enhance travel, commerce, everything, housing, and so through stupidity, the Jamaicans decided to pull out. And Sparrow at the time wrote, people want to know why Jamaica run from the Federation. Yes, they want to know why Jamaica ran away from the Federation. And then another verse went, chorus went. Well, if they say they didn't want Federation, and they know they didn't want to unite as one, tell the doctor you're not in favor. Don't behave like a blasted traitor. How the devil you mean you ain't federated no more? Red Sparrow wrote that, you could hear the fire in his voice because he couldn't believe that he had broken it up. And then Williams made another stupid statement that broke up everything. The great Williams, out of Trinidad and Tobago, Eric can't hear too well, Williams with a hearing aid. I used to go in the tent, and when the Calypsonians sing about him, he used to pull out the hearing aid so he wouldn't hear what they say. And he made a statement that said, 1 from 10 leaves nothing. because there were 10 islands that left. And he worked out that Trinidad and Tobago pull out 1 from 10 leaves nothing. He had new mathematics. But he was also, although it was a stupid statement to make, it also became prophetic because it broke up the Federation. Many years later, I wrote this song. West Indian politicians and their narrowest views for me will always have to be on their P's and Q's to answer my pen when its awesome strength they stretch, yes, stretch to any length to defend the rights the masses want from emancipation until the present. Time is essential in everything. West Indian politician, take heed while I sing, cause you tell Trini he better than Bajan. You tell Beji he's smarter than Jamaican. You tell Jamaican he live on the best island, and wrong and tell them you're preaching island integration. But West Indian politician, I check out your evil ploy. The more I hear you, the more you sound like Westminster choir boy. West Indian politician, I check out your history, and because you train in England, Westminster choking we. West Indian politicians, you use people like a tool, and your aim and game is shameful. Divide and rule. Your hornet's nest must wither and slowly die. Your muddy river, it will run dry, and disaster will strike you like hurricane, wind blowing a change in every island, because time is essential in everything. West Indian politician, take heed while I sing, cause you say you don't want nothing from Guyana. You say you don't care if all them die or suffer. You laugh at Botswana, in Dominica and St. Lucia, then turn around and declare you're looking after the welfare. But West India politician, your end is near, and your own retreat, I swear, I hear loud and clear. For how long can we bear this burden of yours, your festering sores? Fill every ear, and the people will rise with swollen pride. Your shackles will be loosened and then cast aside, because time is essential in everything. West Indian politician, take heed while I sing, 'cause you promised me a proper education. We yet to see the fruits of your prediction. Your wicked deeds are the seeds that smash the People's Federation. But Callaloo is cuckoo, forever one people, one nation. And West Indian politician, I check out your evil ploy. And the more I hear you, the more you sound like Westminster choir boy. West Indian politician, what you're going to do for the little children? West Indian politician, about the unemployment situation. West Indian politician, give me back one nation. We have an artist out there now who is big. God bless her. Has sold millions. In fact, she will be in the first two, if not the first one, in terms of popularity and in terms of record. That's Rihanna. Brilliant, and I applaud her. But in terms of ID, West Indian, she's young enough to do it in the future. She hasn't done it yet, because there's a need for an ID itself as an artist. If you don't do that, this is what will happen. You will make a lot of money, you will get famous, the day will come, and you will go the way of the dodo bird. You have got to identify. Now, in contrast, there's a man called Bob Marley, and he identified with his people one time. And all like you, I shock sometimes when I go hear the young people, don't worry, everything will be all right, and bam, bam, bam. And every song, you know, because he recognized that it wasn't about the money or the fame. It was about identity with African people, with peoples all over the world, and with his Caribbean people. And that race meant nothing to him. Because all this exercise that I do this morning is also in connectivity to understand that we must never allow racism to raise its ugly head again. And there are pockets of it around the Caribbean. I see it all the time. Classism and racism. If you understood the Haitian Revolution, you understand classism. And the musicians of Haiti were always put in the background, because if it came up front, they would have changed everything ever since. But thank God that Bob Marley was able to cross that barrier. Recording mostly in England, he was able to take his music to the peoples of the world. When the British were settling Sierra Leone, they were smart, so they wanted people who could speak English to go there. So they came here and collected. Everybody thought, oh, the slaves came to Barbados. A lot of our people who were slaves went back to Africa, to Sierra Leone. They took them there and built Sierra Leone. But then again, we built Virginia. The first 5 governors of Virginia were either Barbadians or of Barbadian parentage. They don't tell you that. Research it yourself. First set of houses built by Bajans. First man to die in the American Revolution was a Bajan, Christopher Attucks. And we took our music in there into the Carolinas and into the French quarters of New Orleans. That's how they get the jazz. And there's some research done with people like Ricky Braffett and other people who, and I knew this for years, and now the research is showing that I am correct, And I got it by happenstance. I was watching Channel 13 in New York. And this old guy came on, 93 years old, but with a big, strong voice. And he said, before I die, I just want to make it clear that every rhythm we play in New Orleans, whether it be funerals, weddings, parties, or whatever, came out of the Caribbean. And he was one of their top musicians. But he knew the history. And his conscience did not want him to die without passing on that knowledge to the rest of the world. So I want to show you how the music attached to the people and the people to the music. You know of Marcus Garvey. He had music, you know. Music people around him. And passed it on to people like Martin Luther King, who would walk around and say, we shall overcome, because the Caribbean people taught them. We taught them. Because we went to south, and then the southerners went to the north. So we worked with them on the plantations and the cotton fields and so on, teaching them. And we worked building their houses, and we worked educating them. And today you got to fight to get a visa to go to the United States. Can you imagine that? After all that work we did for them. Virginia was colonized from Spikestown. Spikestown was the capital of Barbados and not Bridgetown. And we always had the music. And so Marcus Mosiah Garvey, one of the greatest men to ever live, born in Jamaica, he would always say, rise up, you African people. Victory is certain. Victory is more than certain. And I put those exact words in a song that I wrote for Terencia Coward, we all know as TC, quoting Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Today's politicians, whether it be Randy Adams, Earl Barrow, Williams, Burnham, they all did a reasonable job, but at the foot of everything they did was this music. And one day the truth will come up, because the music has been documented, you see. People like Lion, Attila, Sparrow, Kitchener, Melody, they all wrote political songs trying to integrate the Caribbean. Duke, David Rudder, in more recent times. You hear it. Eddie Grant. We all made our effort, regardless of which territory we were from, to try to integrate the Caribbean. Black Stallion. We must not forget these great artists and the contribution they made to the Caribbean, to the political landscape, to the economic landscape, and to the cultural landscape. Thank you very much.